Have your episode downloads dropped in the last month or so? It's okay. Take a deep breath. It happens to all of us. And it's important that as podcasters, yes, we look at our numbers, we look at our downloads, we see what's working and we see what's not. And there are other things that we can focus on as well. If your numbers are dropping, there's some things we can look at to see, are those things that are in your control? And what are some things that you can actually control to either raise those numbers or create more quality content for your audience? Hello and welcome to another episode of Successful Podcasting Unlocked. I'm your host, Alicia Galati, the founder of Galati Media, a full-service podcast management agency. Today's question is, what should I do when my downloads drop? This is something that happens to every single one of us. It is okay. I actually saw quite a drastic drop in our clients' downloads in September of 2023. And for a second thought, oh my goodness, what is happening? What is going on? Come to find out, Apple Podcasts changed a lot of their algorithms and their features, and it created a drop anywhere from 15 to 30% in downloads on Apple Podcasts across most podcasts. That was really disheartening for a lot of people. And as we head into another election year in the United States, we're going to see those numbers drop. And so I want you to take a step back first. If you're seeing your numbers drop, one, what is happening? What is it that you are doing that could be contributing to this? Are you changing up the way that you're producing your podcast? Have you switched to more solo episodes? Have you switched to more guest episodes? Did you change the format? Have you been marketing it less than you usually do? What is it that you have done that could have impacted this? And then I want you to look outside of yourself and say, what are some things externally that could have impacted my ability to keep my downloads either consistent or with continuous growth? It could be anywhere from, like we talked about, Apple Podcasts changing their software or their algorithm. It could be that there are elections happening. It could be that your audience is in summer mode and maybe you're struggling to grab their attention. There are a lot of different factors that tend to be outside of our control. And so I want to bring it back to what are the things that we can control. With our podcasts, there are a few things that we actually can. That's the content within our show, how much we're talking about our podcast, maybe making some more technical optimizations, as well as showing up consistently. Those are things that we can do. And so let's talk through those and really address ways that you, if your numbers are down, where are you going to be focusing your attention? Let's talk about the content. Look through your content. If your numbers are low, what is the content that you have been creating historically? How can you switch it up? How can you create a little more excitement? Or even take it a step further, how can you collaborate with other podcasters or other people in your industry to create something that your audience is looking for right now? That happened recently where I was seeing a pretty stagnant growth in my podcast, listeners to leads, and I was struggling to see the growth that I wanted to see with that show, especially with having the amount of guests that I have on there. And I found that when I recently looked at my numbers, I saw 2 or 3 months in there that were spikes. And I was like, whoa, what happened here? And of course, if I look back, those 3 months, I had episode after episode of me being a guest on someone else's podcast, showing up. Those were released within that time frame, and that grew my audience. So that is something that I can control. I can get in front of new audiences. I can pitch myself to be on more podcasts. No, I can't control when those episodes go live, but by consistently showing up, it'll allow me to see that consistent spike and that consistent growth. So that is something that I can control. I can also go back and look and say, my solo episodes do really well. I think I might want to throw in a few solo episodes in between guests. That should help to increase the downloads, but also create really valuable content for my audience. The next thing we can control is our marketing. How much are we talking about our podcast? And I don't just mean on social media. I mean in our everyday life. I mean to our email, repurposing those episodes into blog posts or LinkedIn articles. There are so many different ways that you can take one episode and really stretch it for all it's worth and turn it into a ton of more content. Don't forget, we have our podcasting and AI repurposing mini course. It's only $47. You can check that out at galatimedia.com/powerup, and that will take you right to that course. That course is invaluable. If you are an indie podcaster and you are really looking to make the most of your podcast episodes, that is a great way to do it. And it is an affordable way to really turn those episodes into so much more content. So how are you marketing? How are you promoting? The next is to look at the technical optimization. What software are you using? What tools are you using? Are there better tools out there to allow you to show up better? At the beginning of 2024, we moved all of our clients from audiograms to videograms. And what I mean by that is instead of having a still frame where it's just a graphic with the sound behind it, we now have talking heads like my video. We have someone talking and excited and sharing their insight because that is the content that does well. What are you sharing? How are you promoting your podcast? Are there other and better ways that you could be going about promoting yourself and talking about your stuff? When downloads are down or business is down or slower, it's a great time to look at your software. It's a great time to look at what's working and what's not. What are you spending your money on and actually using versus not using at all? Maybe you signed up for a free 7-day trial, never got around to canceling it. What are those things? Let's look at that stuff, really make the most of the things that we actually can control. And the last is to look at your consistency. Are you showing up regularly? How can you maintain that schedule that you have established with your audience? Maybe that downtime is a great time to go out and batch record. Last episode, we talked about taking a more seasonal approach to your podcast and avoiding burnout. When your numbers are low, it's easy to feel like it's not working. But if you are consistently showing up, I promise you will see those numbers grow and you will see your audience growing with it. So how can you make the most? Maybe now is a great time to plan out your next 10, 15 podcast episodes, or to start inviting people to be guests on your podcast. There are tons of things that you can control during this time. My challenge for you today is to look at your numbers. Are you seeing a dip? Are you seeing an increase? What can you attribute from your own things that are leading to this? And what can you attribute to outside factors that are causing these numbers to shift or change? And then what is one thing that you can focus on of the ones that we talked about during the lower download months? When you have a month where there's less downloads, how are you going to grab the reins of your podcast and steer it in the direction that you want it to go in? If you have your own podcasting questions, I would love to answer them. You can send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn, or you can go to successfulpodcastingunlocked.com and leave your question there. Until next time, happy podcasting.